amazing shapes in these locations. But what seemed to really fit for me, and clearly for Patrick as well, was the fact that my colouring and my ability to use my body blended well into the locations that we were in. Well, that shot was taken at about 6 o'clock in the evening, and I was actually quite a long way away from the camera, and I was actually having great fun pretending that I was a squaw. And I could suddenly hear these shouts in the distance, and it was Patrick saying, "That's the one, go higher!" We had fun. We had a lot of fun. And Patrick had an attitude of, if it ain't fun, then don't do it.
We did 17 calendars together in 11 locations, some of the most dramatic and exciting scenery in the world. Of course, the most dramatic one was when we went to Russia.
250th at 5, 6 and 2/3. Yeah, that's good. Poor girl, she's going to have cold feet.
No, get it on. Feet together. One more.
Patrick got the very best out of the girls because they trusted him totally. They knew that he would produce wonderful pictures, so they would respond to whatever he asked them to do.
But here comes the car. This blue car keeps stopping again.
Yes, that's the KGB.
Right. Oi! Exposure! Don't move anything. It's great. Still. It's beautiful. Oops. No.
Yeah.
You've got 2 books, well, 1 calendar and 1 book out. Interested to know if you kind of got the proofs mixed up as they came back. Girly calendar and
It's
this
not a girly
magnificent
calendar. It's got
book about
girls
the
in
Queen.
it. I mean, what does a girly calendar mean?
It's got girls with boobs and bottoms.
Yes, but what's wrong with
You're on the
that?
defensive a little bit about this girly calendar. Why did you ask me what was wrong with it?
Because you said girly calendar when I came in the door, before I came in the door, which automatically gives it some kind of cheap feel.
Does it?
I think.
What would you call it?
Well, I think it's a picture of landscapes with girls in it. When I went to photograph some important people in Japan, I had an exhibition there in Tokyo and in Kyoto, and the imperial photographer came to see me, and he said, "How many photographers took these pictures?" And I said, "I did." He said, "Impossible." He said, "King, queen, princes, beautiful women, nude people, must be more than one photographer." I said, no, it's all my work. I said, "What do you do?" He said, "Just emperor."
One of the biggest challenges Patrick faced was Charles and Diana's wedding, when he was chosen as official photographer. How could he bypass the formality of this most public of occasions to capture its real humanity?
Now, you're the man who's going to have to take the wedding pictures, the official pictures today. How are you going to do it with the crowned heads of Europe staring at you?
Well, I think the problem to start with is that I'm the one sort of bad bit of news during the day because I held everybody up. And they will have had the service and then come back and then wave to the crowd, and then I've got half an hour. And I think the only answer is to be fairly vociferous. I actually put a whistle in my pocket, an ordinary thing called an Acme Thunderer, which you can buy from any sports shop. It's got a P in it and it makes a terrible noise. And I use one now for my dog and it works. So I just simply took the whistle out of my pocket and blew it. And it did create, first of all, a look of surprise, which I shot and didn't use, and then it broke into a grin, and I managed to fire a burst off, and one of them did it. The collapsed group, as I call it, happened partly by design, partly by accident. I didn't reckon on the fact that there were 2 guys from the Press Association and Associated Press either side of me shooting everything that I shot. So I was getting a bit pissed off because we were only allowed to do 1 roll on each setup. And I was realizing they were getting every shot that I got. So when we had the final group, I made a click with my tongue, which I think was meant to sound like a Hasselblad going off. So they thought I'd taken 1 more picture than I had. So when I got to the end, I said, "Gentlemen, have you finished?" And they said, "Yes." And I said to the group, "Okay, that's it, it's a wrap." And they all collapsed, and I have 1 more frame, bang. And they've never spoken to me since.
I really admired the way he was able to break down the protocol of royalty. And I particularly remember with Princess Diana's wedding, the way that he took what was a very formal situation and brought out all the human interest and all the joy of how much Princess Diana adored children. I particularly remember the one where in all her finery and her 100 feet of train, she was able to just reach down to the little flower girl and talk to her.
That was Winston Churchill's granddaughter, Clementine Hambro, and she'd just had a completely exhausting day. She came into Buckingham Palace and she started to just, I think, break up a little, and Diana, as was characteristic, as we discovered later with the children, just went straight over to her. And I just had a little point-and-shoot camera in my pocket, and I just went click and bang, that was it. It was better than any of the big setup stuff. So very often the little snaps are the shots that you remember.
After his professional success with the royal wedding, it was the fragile state of Patrick's own marriage that hit both him and the headlines.
I think the biggest shock in his life was when his relationship with Leonora fell apart. And he, I think, in fairness, the collapse of the relationship was primarily his fault. He was traveling a lot, he was working a lot. In those days he was drinking too much, and he had nowhere to go, so he came to stay with me here. And I think he stayed for about 6 months, I can't remember. But he was desperately depressed. He lost a lot of weight. He sort of gave up his work. He really was a wreck. To the point that he kept on moaning about life's not worth living. I'm going to kill myself. And I got frightfully bored with this, and I thought probably shock treatment might be the best solution. And so I said, look, I'm sick of hearing this suicide thing of yours. If you're going to do it, let's do it. I'll drive you to Chelsea Bridge. You can get out and jump, and that's the end of it. So we did that. I said, get in the car. And he's sort of whimpering, said, oh, you're not being nice to me. So anyhow, we got in the car, we go to Chelsea Bridge, and I said, get out. And it was a cold winter night, probably midnight or something. And this little figure was sort of shivering on the bridge. I said, right, now's your chance. I'm going. So I drove on, only about 100 yards, keeping an eye on him. And then came back, and of course, he certainly didn't jump. So I said, get back in the car, and I don't want to hear any more about this suicide nonsense. So perhaps a slightly risky strategy, but I never heard him say that again.
Patrick was so dedicated to achieving success that he could never imagine his marriage would actually fail.
I think that breakup of his marriage took him a long time to get over. And I think it's fair to say that until he started the relationship with his present companion, Annunziata Asquith, he really was still searching. But she changed his life.
Annunziata and Patrick were friends many moons ago, and it's funny how these things happen, I suppose, then you have a break of a few years, or quite a few years in their case, and then Patrick sort of fell head over heels in love with her all over again. And